Hello and welcome. This is video number 5 in an 8-part series on the Industrial Revolution. And in today's video and in the next 2 videos, I'm going to take a look at the concept of economic systems. And in particular, I'm going to give attention to capitalism and socialism. In today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to draw the distinctions between capitalism and socialism. Capitalism and socialism, depending on who you're talking to, can almost be controversial subjects. People tend to have fairly strong opinions or may have strong opinions, either favoring one or thinking ill of the other. For the purposes of these videos, what I want to try to do is just lay out some of the basics of what both capitalism and socialism, what they are, and at least make it so that you are in a better position to understand some of the key differences. So with that, we'll get started. Now, in today's video, really what I want to do is talk a little bit about some of the key things that might represent differences between capitalism and socialism, and then talk about one of the ways in which we'll try to draw some of the distinctions. So if you look at the screen right now, I've got a chart up here that's got capitalism and socialism across the top, and then has a variety of categories going down the left-hand side. This is by no means a perfect chart that distinguishes between capitalism and socialism, but as much as anything, what I want you to see are some of the ways in which we identify differences between the two systems. And so we'll kind of give particular attention to the categories that are going down the left-hand side. Now, before I run through those, just briefly speaking to the emergence of both of these economic systems, as you'll recall from earlier videos, going back to the 1500s and the emergence of overseas trade and a commercial revolution that really began to take shape, we begin to see some of the elements come together that we typically associate with capitalism. It's with overseas trade going out of Europe that you begin to see individuals and groups of individuals putting resources together to try to get involved with business ventures with the hopes of making money for themselves. And so that's kind of a beginning edge of a transition from basically governments, so think like a king and their kingdom holding all of the resources, effectively holding all of the resources and sort of distributed them as they saw fit, to actual individuals being able to get involved in the process of taking on personal financial risk for the potential personal financial reward. So that becomes, we get to begin getting some of the core elements of capitalism going. Now, with socialism, that's an economic perspective that really began to take shape during the Industrial Revolution years, largely driven out of seeing some of the really tough conditions that people were experiencing, and what seemed to be exploitation of the workers, for example, by owners of industry or owners of businesses, and out of a view that was going to go on permanently, like that was just the nature of the industrial model. Some people began to embrace and think through a different kind of economic planning model to try to alleviate some of those concerns. So again, getting to the point where you have these 2 examples of economic systems, I want to just point out some of the ways or some of the categories where you can draw some distinctions between the two. For example, if you start with ownership on the upper left-hand side, basically what that's speaking to is with capitalism, you have the opportunity for individuals to own kind of all the different types of things that might be available to be owned. Whereas with socialism, the idea would be that the government controls access to everything, and then conceivably can distribute that as needed. When it comes to equality, think in terms of income and earnings for individuals with a capitalist system, what's going on in the marketplace and what your role is within the marketplace is going to determine what you get. Whereas with socialism, the idea would be to actually distribute equally the resources that were available within a society. What things cost. With capitalism, it's going to come down to supply and demand. What's available? What are people willing to pay for it? That's going to determine how much something costs. With socialism, price controls basically speaks to the government will determine the availability of products and what those products are gonna cost. And as you work through efficiency, how the taxes work within the two systems, healthcare is one. Whereas, like with capitalism, the idea would be market forces are going to determine what's available for healthcare for people. Whereas with socialism, it's going to ensure that it's available to everybody. And so as you go through there's just some different ways that you can draw some distinctions between the two. And it doesn't necessarily mean that one is good or one is bad, but it's just representative of different approaches. In many cases, to try to achieve the same results. I mean, think back to look at healthcare. With capitalism and with socialism, both systems would desire the opportunity for people to receive the healthcare they need. The difference is with capitalism, they believe that if market forces are what drive the availability of healthcare, both with research and development as well as prices and availability, that the greatest care is going to be available to the greatest number of people. With socialism, they don't want to leave anything to chance and don't want to, leave the possibility that somebody who needs a medical procedure, for example, is not going to be able to get it because they can't afford it. They want to make sure, or they operate out of a belief that if they make health care provided and that everybody is available to get it, that's going to be the greatest healthcare opportunity for the greatest number of people. So they have ultimately the same goal, just different approaches for how to get to that goal. And so that speaks to just the last thing I want to touch on before we take a specific look at socialism and capitalism, and that is this concept of factors of production. And when trying to do some comparing and contrasting between capitalism and socialism, how these questions get answered is really the key to kind of thinking through the differences. So with factors of production, the questions are what gets produced, how it gets produced, and who gets what is produced. And again, as we talk about socialism and capitalism, we'll walk through those questions for each and talk about how the answers are achieved. So again, with factors of production, what gets made in, say, a given country, how the different things that get made are made, and then what determines who gets the things that are made. So again, with our next two videos, one will take a look at socialism, one will take a look at capitalism, and talk through how those questions are answered. Hopefully, if you find the topics of capitalism and socialism a little bit confusing or at all confusing, hopefully walking through those factors of production questions will add a little bit of clarity to help you distinguish between the two. So hopefully you've found this start to talking about capitalism and socialism helpful, and hopefully you'll continue with me with the next two videos. Thanks for watching.